If you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Harsh little sentence, isn't it? Good. It should hurt. Because some of you walk through life like unpaid interns in your own story, smiling too fast, apologizing too early, offering too much, wondering why the room keeps eating you alive. You thought being harmless would make you loved. You thought being available would make you respected. You thought if you stayed soft enough, patient enough, understanding enough, the world would eventually say, "Ah, there you are, the good one, the loyal one, the one we should protect." It does not work like that. The world notices weight. It notices usefulness. It notices discipline. It notices skill. It notices calm pressure. It notices people who can carry more than their own feelings. And you, maybe you are tired now. Tired of being the emotional donation box in every relationship. Tired of being remembered only when someone needs a ride, an answer, a favor, a shoulder, a little piece of your time to chew on. Start being valuable, not loud, not fake, not arrogant, valuable. Learn something, build something, finish something. Hold your word like it costs blood. Walk into a room with less need leaking from your eyes. Because pity is not power. Potential is not value. Good intentions alone are not value. Value is what remains when charm dies, when excuses run out, when nobody claps, when nobody watches, when life gets inconvenient and you still stand there, useful, clean, sharp, calm, terrifyingly real. So no, this is not about becoming cruel. It is about becoming difficult to dismiss. First, stop confusing affection with respect. Those are not twins. Sometimes they are not even cousins. A person can like you and still not take you seriously. A family member can love you and still speak over you, delay you, minimize you, use your softness like furniture. A friend can laugh with you, call you brother, put an arm around your shoulder, and still never trust you with anything important because somewhere deep down he has measured you and found no weight. That hurts, doesn't it? The little humiliation of realizing you were welcomed but not valued, invited but not relied on, loved in the way people love pillows, old songs, harmless pets, background comfort. You know the look. The look they give the person who is always around but never decisive. Always nice but never sharp. Always emotional but never useful under pressure. A man loses his job and suddenly the family starts listening to the cousin who knows how to solve things, not the cousin who knows how to talk about feelings for 3 hours. A friend group has fun with the funny one all year, but when a crisis hits, they call the steady one who knows what to do. At work, everyone smiles at the warm coworker, but the room changes when the competent one enters. That is not cruelty. That is gravity. And gravity does not negotiate with your wounded self-image. It pulls towards substance. So ask yourself a question ugly enough to wake you up. When the lights flicker, when the plan breaks, when the pressure rises, what exactly do you bring besides feelings? Can you think clearly? Can you organize chaos? Can you solve? Can you carry? Can you be trusted with money, timing, truth, responsibility, silence? Start there. Because respect is rarely spoken first. It is measured, quietly, coldly, repeatedly. And once people feel your weight, affection changes too. It becomes cleaner, less casual, less patronizing, less insulting in disguise. Stop begging to be included. Become the kind of presence that changes the standard of the room. Second, understand this before life teaches it with its knee on your chest. Kindness without competence becomes self-erasure. I know, that sounds cruel. Good. Truth usually arrives with bad bedside manners. You can be sincere, generous, patient, forgiving, gentle with people's weaknesses, careful with their dignity, beautiful in your intentions, and still be treated like spare cloth if you do not know how to produce value in the real world. A man tells everyone he has a good heart, but he cannot keep time, cannot keep a promise, cannot manage money, cannot finish what he starts. A woman pours care into everyone around her, but she lives in confusion, depends on others for every serious decision, folds under discomfort, and wonders why people only come to cry on her shoulder, but never build with her. Because hearts are precious, yes. But in daily life, people trust structure. They trust results. They trust steadiness. You do not need to become hard to become valuable. You need to become capable. Learn to repair something. Learn to sell, write, build, teach, organize, plan, analyze, remember, lead, endure, manage pressure, hold silence, tell the truth without trembling. Learn one thing so well that your presence begins to save time, reduce chaos, create relief. Relief is expensive. People remember relief. They remember the one who made the mess smaller. They remember the one who remained useful while others remained dramatic. And no, this is not soulless. It is honorable. Because becoming capable means you can serve better, protect better, give cleaner, speak less, and mean more. The world is full of loud, fragile people demanding significance they have not built. Do not become one of them. Let your value rise so quietly that one day absence starts speaking for you. Let people feel the difference when you are not there to steady the floor, to clarify the fog, to carry the ugly part nobody wanted. That is when kindness stops looking weak. That is when kindness becomes weight. Third, stop performing need in public and then wondering why the world prices you cheaply. Need has a smell. It does. Not financial need only, emotional need, approval need, validation need, the desperate little hunger to be seen, chosen, praised, reassured, answered immediately, taken seriously before you have become serious. People pretend not to notice it because naming it is rude, but they feel it. They feel it in the person who talks too much to prove intelligence, in the one who over-explains every choice, in the one who rushes to answer every silence as if quiet itself were rejection. You say you want respect, but then you argue with every misunderstanding, explain every intention, chase every cold mood, volunteer every insecurity, put your whole emotional skeleton on the table and call it honesty. No, that is leakage. Valuable people do not make others carry their self-worth. They do not walk into a room saying, "Please believe in me before I've given you a reason." They move differently. They speak with less panic. They let some things remain misunderstood. They let weak people gossip. They let results do part of the talking. A man at work is ignored until the numbers begin bending around his discipline. A son in a family is mocked as long as he is a promise, then suddenly spoken to carefully the month he becomes reliable with money, timing, obligations, presence. A friend who was once the emotional clown becomes difficult to trivialize after he learns restraint. Now his no lands heavier because it no longer comes from mood, it comes from structure. This is not about becoming cold theater. It is about reducing unnecessary explanation. Let your effort, precision, and standard create a field around you. Let people work a little to understand you. Because when you explain everything, offer everything, react to everything, you teach the world that access to you is cheap, and cheap things get handled carelessly. Pull your energy inward. Build, improve, observe. Let your value mature in quiet until even your silence starts sounding expensive. Fourth, value is born in private long before it is recognized in public. That is the part fragile people hate. They want the visible reward without the invisible ritual. They want confidence without repetition, status without sacrifice, respect without boredom, strength without discipline, composure without self-control. Childish trade. Life does not accept it. What you repeat in private becomes what others feel in public. If you lie to your own schedule, break small promises to yourself, keep saying tomorrow with that tired little smile, keep starting and quitting and starting and quitting, do not be surprised when your presence feels soft at the edges. People may not know why, but they sense the looseness. They sense the untrained will. The opposite is true too. The person who wakes up when he said he would, learns when nobody praises him, keeps his room, keeps his notes, keeps his word, keeps his body under some degree of command, keeps showing up without dramatic announcements. That person begins to carry a strange atmosphere, even before money, even before fame, even before visible success. Because discipline changes the eyes. It changes the pauses between words. It changes how much panic leaks into the mouth. Look at ordinary life. The student nobody notices becomes quietly dangerous after a year of real study. Now he no longer begs teachers for mercy because he has built competence. The young man treated like a joke in his own house slowly changes the family tone, not by speeches, but by becoming dependable every day until excuses stop fitting him. The employee everyone interrupted starts being heard when she becomes the one who always arrives prepared, always catches the missing detail, always saves the team from embarrassment. It looks magical from the outside. It is not magic. It is repetition with dignity. So stop asking, how do I look valuable? And start asking, what do I repeat when nobody is watching? Because that is where the hidden architecture is built. That is where your future voice is forged. Not in motivation, in ritual. Not in performance, in private obedience to what you know you should do. Public weight is just private order finally becoming visible. Fifth, stop being emotionally cheap. That one stings. Good. Because some of you hand out access to your inner life like free samples in a crowded store, and then act shocked when nobody treats it like gold. You answer every message instantly, reveal every wound too early, forgive before understanding, explain before being asked, reassure people who have not earned reassurance, keep your door open for those who wipe their shoes on your peace. And then, when they disappear, disrespect, delay, manipulate, or return only when convenient, you call them heartless. Maybe they are. Maybe. But maybe you also trained them badly. Maybe you taught them that your presence comes without standard, that your attention renews automatically, that your boundaries are decorative, that your loyalty can be activated by guilt, nostalgia, pity, or one soft apology delivered with the right, tired voice. Valuable people are not always distant, but they are measured. They do not confuse openness with wisdom. They do not mistake overgiving for goodness. A man who is always available becomes invisible. Everyone assumes he will still be there tomorrow, so nobody prices his time properly today. A woman who responds to every emotional emergency becomes the unofficial therapist of people who would never rearrange their schedule for her. A friend who keeps forgiving public disrespect in the name of peace becomes the safest target in the room. People test themselves against him because he has announced, without words, that consequences are unlikely. This is why restraint is mercy toward yourself. Not arrogance, not games, restraint. Answering later sometimes, saying less sometimes, refusing softly but clearly, letting discomfort do its honest work, letting people feel the cost of casual access. Because when everything in you is instantly available, nothing in you feels rare enough to protect. Start moving like your energy has accounting. Start noticing who only becomes affectionate when they sense your withdrawal. Start noticing who panics when your usefulness pauses. Start noticing who calls you changed when all you did was stop volunteering for your own depletion. Cheap access creates expensive regret. And no, becoming valuable does not mean becoming cold, selfish, or cruel. It means you stop scattering yourself on every doorstep that looks lonely. It means your care becomes intentional. Your words become fewer. Your yes becomes cleaner. Your no becomes believable. That is not hardness. That is dignity finally learning mathematics. Sixth, there is a particular humiliation that changes a person forever, and maybe you know it too well. The humiliation of being present not counted. The humiliation of speaking and watching your words float past people like steam. The humiliation of trying, sincerely trying, while someone louder, lazier, emptier gets the credit because they understood one brutal truth earlier than you did. The world does not reward hidden potential. It responds to demonstrated value. That hurts in families. It hurts at work. It hurts in love. It hurts in your own chest when you lie awake at night replaying moments you smiled through publicly and bled through privately. The older brother who was always the smart one suddenly becomes a quiet cautionary tale because he kept dreaming instead of building. The younger one, less impressive on paper, becomes the pillar because he learned reliability, money, timing, repair, patience under stress. A man spends years being funny and liked, then watches the woman he loves trust another man with her future because that other man feels like structure. A talented employee keeps waiting to be noticed until someone less gifted but more disciplined becomes indispensable. And the ugly part? Sometimes the people who overlooked you were not malicious. They were merely following evidence. That is the knife, isn't it? Not betrayal. Evidence. Not conspiracy. Consequence. That realization can make you bitter if you are weak, or useful if you are honest. Because now the theater ends. Now the excuses start sounding childish. They don't see my heart. They misunderstand me. They always choose the wrong people. Maybe sometimes. But if pattern after pattern keeps repeating, at some point wisdom demands an uglier question. What am I failing to embody that keeps making my value invisible? Maybe you speak without precision. Maybe you promise too much and close too little. Maybe you are kind but scattered. Maybe you are loyal but undisciplined. Maybe you are intelligent but emotionally porous. Maybe you love deeply but carry no useful structure so people enjoy your warmth and build their future elsewhere. Hear me carefully. Your pain is not proof of depth. Your suffering is not proof of value. Your intentions are not proof of readiness. Proof lives in patterns. Can you keep a standard when nobody is watching? Can you remain decent under insult? Can you keep working when praise dries up? Can you learn from embarrassment without turning it into identity? Can you let being underestimated refine you instead of rot you? Because some people take one season of neglect and decide the world is evil. No, the world is often just busy, distracted, transactional, tired. It notices what reduces friction, what increases order, what solves, protects, stabilizes, elevates. Become that. And yes, there is sadness in this, deep sadness. The sadness of knowing you could have lived more sharply years ago if someone had told you sooner that emotional intensity alone is not enough, that sincerity is beautiful but incomplete, that being different means nothing if you cannot make that difference useful to life, to work, to people, to duty. So mourn a little if you must. Mourn the years of waste, the soft confusion, the cheap approval, The time you spent begging to be recognized instead of becoming undeniable. Then stand up cleaner. Let humiliation become instruction. Let instruction become structure. Let structure become value. And let value speak so clearly that one day even the people who dismissed you have to rearrange their tone when they hear your name. Seventh, become reliable enough to frighten chaos. I am serious. Reliability is not boring. Reliability is one of the most psychologically powerful forms of value in the world because it is rare, and rare things distort rooms. Everybody says they care. Everybody says they will show up. Everybody has bright little plans when the weather is good and the ego is fed and the body is rested and the mood is sweet. But real life does not ask for your plans when you are comfortable. It asks for your character when you are tired. It asks whether your promises still have bones when sleep is short, money is tight, praise is absent, and nobody is coming to applaud your integrity. The reliable person changes the emotional weather of a space. Families exhale when he enters because bills get remembered, timings get respected, panic gets reduced. Teams listen when she speaks because her calm has already saved them 3 times. Friends stop doubting because they have seen her consistency survive mood, distance, pressure, inconvenience. You want to be valuable? Become the person whose word creates relief. Do you understand how expensive relief is? A father who is not dramatic but always present becomes the hidden center of a house. A brother who does what he says, when he says, without needing applause, becomes more influential than the louder one who wins every argument. A student who stops discussing dreams and quietly becomes the one others borrow notes from, ask for clarity from, trust under exam pressure, that student has begun building authority long before any formal title arrives. Authority is often just repeated reliability witnessed by enough people. And the darkly funny part? Most people could transform their reputation in a year if they simply stopped performing intensity and started performing consistency. But consistency is boring to the ego. It does not give daily fireworks. It gives quiet momentum. It gives fewer excuses. It forces you to meet yourself without costume. A man says he wants respect, but he cancels easily, arrives late, forgets details, gets emotional when corrected, overpromises, underdelivers, then acts wounded when others stop trusting him. That is not persecution. That is arithmetic. A woman says she is underestimated, but she lives in reaction, lets small discomfort hijack the day, changes direction every week, starts things with passion, and leaves them with poetry. The room may love her spirit, yes, but it will not place weight on her name. Reliability is heavy. It lands. It steadies. It makes people unconsciously recalculate you. And no, reliable does not mean lifeless. It does not mean mechanical, joyless, robotic, emptied of softness. It means your inner weather is not allowed to sabotage your outer duty every time it changes. It means your feelings are real, but they do not drive the bus into a ditch every Thursday. Learn to separate mood from mission. Learn to finish even when the emotional music stops. Learn to carry small burdens without announcing them like a martyr collecting witnesses. Learn to be on time. Learn to remember. Learn to prepare. Learn to think ahead for other people. Learn to close loops. Learn to answer clearly. Learn to say, "I forgot," once, fix it, and then build a system so it happens less. Systems. Fragile people hate systems because systems expose how much of their identity depends on chaos. But systems are mercy. A notebook is mercy. A schedule is mercy. A habit is mercy. Preparation is mercy. They prevent your future self from needing heroic moods to do ordinary duties. That is value, not the dramatic promise, the repeatable standard. Some of you have suffered because you are surrounded by inconsistent people and you know the damage too well. The father who says tomorrow for years. The friend who is warm only when lonely. The manager who changes rules with his mood. The partner who apologizes beautifully and repeats the wound by next week. That kind of instability rots trust from the inside. It makes the nervous system suspicious. It makes the heart tired. So when you become reliable, you do more than gain status. You become safe in a deep sense. Safe not because you are weak or endlessly accommodating, but because your patterns can be trusted. Your word does not shapeshift. Your standards do not collapse every time attention moves elsewhere. People rest around that. They build around that. They respect that. And here is the severe truth. The more reliable you become, the less you will need to speak about your worth. You will feel it in how people consult you, in how they stop testing you carelessly, in how they notice when you are absent, in how your yes and no begin to affect plans. Start small if you must. Keep one promise today, one real one, then another tomorrow, then another when nobody cares, then another when you are irritated, then another when you are tired. Stack these until your name starts carrying memory. Because a reliable person does not beg for value. A reliable person becomes the standard by which the room starts noticing everyone else's weakness. Eighth, learn to think like your life has consequences, because it does. Too many people want value without judgment. They want admiration without discernment. They want to be taken seriously while living mentally asleep, reacting to moods, headlines, gossip, insecurity, the last person who disappointed them, the next person who flatters them. And then they wonder why their decisions keep bleeding into each other. Start being valuable by becoming difficult to fool, difficult to rush, difficult to bait, difficult to emotionally purchase. A thinking person notices incentives. He notices who becomes polite when money enters the room. He notices who praises principles publicly and abandons them privately when status is at stake. He notices the difference between a real apology and a performance designed to reopen access. He notices who only supports discipline as long as it remains smaller than their own comfort. This kind of thought is not cynicism. It is hygiene, mental hygiene. If you cannot read patterns, people will write on you. If you cannot read motives, you will keep calling lessons betrayal. If you cannot think past your feelings will become the easiest door through which weakness enters your life, dressed like love, opportunity, friendship, or just this once. Look at ordinary life. A young man keeps telling his plans to everyone, mistaking excitement for progress, then feels cursed when nothing grows. He was not cursed. He was leaking energy into mouths that could only consume it. A woman keeps trusting charm over pattern because she is moved by warmth, then calls herself unlucky when the same personality type wounds her in 3 different bodies. A worker takes every criticism personally, misses the actual lesson, and spends 5 years emotionally circling the same weakness, while someone colder but humbler improves. Thinking well means learning to separate signal from noise. Not every compliment matters. Not every insult matters. Not every opportunity deserves your hunger. Not every person who feels intense is deep. Not every quiet person is wise. Not every religious-looking sentence comes from clean intention. Not every joke is harmless. Not every conflict is oppression. Valuable people are not hypnotized by appearances. They keep measuring reality. What happened? What repeats? What follows what? Who benefits? What changed? Where is the pattern? What is the cost? What is the long-term shape of this choice if repeated for a year, 5 years, 10? Do you see how powerful that is? Most lives are not destroyed by one grand catastrophe. They are eroded by unexamined repetition. The same laziness excused under different poetry. The same weak boundary renamed kindness. The same neediness disguised as loyalty. The same financial carelessness called living in the moment. The same emotional volatility called being real. No, being real is not the same as being ungoverned. A real person can think before surrendering to impulse. A real person can study the pattern of his own failure without melodrama. A real person can admit, I keep choosing what flatters me over what strengthens me. That admission alone can save years. There is another layer too. Thinking makes your compassion cleaner. Without thought, compassion becomes leakage. You keep helping people in ways that feed their disorder. You keep excusing those who should be confronted. You keep confronting those who simply needed patience. You keep saying yes to what soothes your image and no to what would actually build your future. Judgment is mercy sharpened by reality. It allows you to help without being consumed, to trust without being naive, to forgive without becoming furniture, to speak kindly without abandoning truth. That is value. Not noise, not emotional theater, not endless reaction. Thought. Clear, sober, pattern-sensitive thought. And yes, It will cost you some illusions. Good. Let them die. Let the fantasy that everyone means well die. Let the fantasy that talent alone will save you die. Let the fantasy that intensity equals sincerity die. Let the fantasy that you can keep living on instinct and somehow drift into significance die loudly. Because sleeping people are easy to use, easy to impress, easy to distract, easy to keep weak. Wake the mind, and value begins there. A mind that notices, a mind that questions, a mind that measures, a mind that does not bow every time a voice becomes charming or a room becomes loud. Become that, and even before your outer life changes, your inner life stops being cheap territory for every passing influence. Ninth, start governing your tongue, because loose speech is one of the fastest ways to announce inner poverty. I know, that sounds severe. It should. Listen to people long enough and you can hear their discipline leaking or their emptiness echoing. The one who complains about everyone is often telling you about his own helplessness. The one who gossips constantly is advertising that he cannot create enough value to hold attention honestly. The one who overpromises is confessing weakness before reality even arrives. The one who explains every move, every emotion, every grievance, every plan is usually trying to borrow significance from words because deeds are not ready yet. Valuable people speak with more economy, not because they are cold statues, but because their speech is attached to standard. They know words create commitments, expose need, reveal training, and alter how people carry them in memory. A mouth without restraint can undo years of quiet improvement. Watch daily life. A capable young man ruins trust by talking about 10 plans he cannot yet sustain. Now every later success arrives contaminated by memories of old exaggeration. A woman with real insight weakens her own gravity by gossiping whenever she feels slighted. People start enjoying her company, but stop trusting her discretion. A father who always threatens consequences and rarely follows through teaches the whole house to laugh silently at his authority. See it? Speech either carries structure or it leaks it. This is why silence has such psychological power. Not theatrical silence, not manipulative silence, clean silence. The kind that comes from not needing to fill every gap, defend every image, answer every provocation, advertise every wound. Silence lets your actions gather force. It lets fools reveal themselves without your interruption. It lets the room feel your standard before you explain it to death. And yes, there are moments to speak hard. There are moments when cowardly quiet is just fear wearing polite shoes. A lie should sometimes be corrected. A boundary should sometimes be spoken. An injustice should sometimes be named. But even then, valuable speech is measured. It is not hysterical leakage. It is not ego foam. It is precise. It knows the point. It says less than emotion wanted and more than fear preferred. That takes training. It takes swallowing the first impulse, letting the heat pass through, then choosing language that serves truth instead of merely displaying pain. Pain loves to talk in circles. Value does not. Consider the man who, after being insulted, does not collapse into a public essay about his misunderstood soul. He answers once, clearly, or steps back entirely and lets his future conduct draw the final line. Consider the employee who receives correction and, instead of defending ego with 10 explanations, asks one sharp question, learns, adjusts, and quietly improves. Consider the friend who is disappointed, speaks truth without humiliation, then changes access according to pattern instead of drama. That is expensive speech. Speech with spine. Speech that leaves an imprint. Some of you keep bleeding through your mouth because your inner world has no container. Every frustration becomes an announcement. Every dream becomes a performance. Every insecurity becomes a request for rescue. And then you wonder why people hold you lightly. Hold more inside until it becomes thought, prayer, skill, or action. Not everything needs audience. Not everything deserves release. A tongue under command is not dead. It is dangerous in the best way. It can comfort without lying, correct without degrading, refuse without panic, promise without inflation, joke without filth, speak truth without betraying dignity. That kind of speech raises your value because it tells the world your inner house is not collapsing every time the wind changes. And when people feel that, they listen differently. They may not admit it. People rarely admit when your discipline frightens them, but they feel it. They begin choosing words more carefully around you. They stop testing you with the same cheap provocations. They understand, even unconsciously, that your speech comes from governance, not hunger. Become that. A mouth that does not leak. A voice that means what it says. A silence that is not empty, but loaded with self-command. One day you will understand that most of your suffering did not come from the world refusing to love you. It came from you presenting yourself to life in a way that invited casual handling. Too soft where you needed structure, too available where you needed standard, too emotional where you needed judgment, too hungry for reassurance where you needed work, too eager to be chosen where you needed to become choice-worthy. And that realization, it is both ugly and merciful. Ugly because it burns your excuses. Merciful because it returns power to your hands. You were not doomed to remain the version of yourself that was easy to overlook. You were not sentenced to be background comfort in other people's stories. You were not required to keep auditioning for respect with smiles, over-explaining, over-giving, over-feeling, over-promising, and then collapsing in private when the room still chooses weight over warmth. Of course it chooses weight. It always did. So become heavier in the right ways. Heavier in discipline, heavier in thought, heavier in reliability, heavier in speech, heavier in self-command, heavier in usefulness, heavier in moral clarity, heavier in the quiet ability to carry discomfort without turning it into drama. Start being valuable when nobody is watching. Start being valuable when the mood is dead. Start being valuable when the old you wants quick comfort, cheap attention, lazy delay, emotional indulgence, another night of fantasy instead of effort. Start there, because that is where identity hardens. And yes, the path is lonely sometimes. Improvement often is. When you stop gossiping, some conversations lose you. When you stop leaking, some relationships grow confused. When you stop being easy to consume, some people call you cold. When you stop explaining every wound, some assume you have no heart. Let them misunderstand a little. Misunderstanding is often the tax paid by people who are finally becoming real. You do not owe every version of yourself a lifelong loyalty. The weak one was not evil. The needy one was not disgusting. The confused one was not worthless. He was just unfinished. She was just untrained. They were trying to survive with the tools they had. Thank them, and then outgrow them. Outgrow the softness that made you easy to erase. Outgrow the laziness that kept calling itself potential. Outgrow the emotional exhibitionism that kept begging to be understood before becoming understandable. Outgrow the fragile pride that wanted reward before repetition. There is a harder, cleaner life waiting for you. Not glamorous every day, not dramatic, not constantly praised. Harder, cleaner. A life where your word means something, where your work reduces chaos, where your silence is not emptiness but control, where your presence relieves pressure instead of increasing it, where people can trust your patterns, where you do not need to chase dignity because your habits have begun manufacturing it quietly. That life is built, not wished into existence, built in the dark, built in boredom, built in repetition, built in the moment you keep a promise nobody else even knows you made. Built when you close the tab, do the work, hold the boundary, tell the truth, arrive on time, control the tongue, study the pattern, correct the weakness, and keep going without immediate reward. Do that long enough, and something terrifyingly beautiful happens. You stop asking whether you matter. The question starts dying because evidence begins answering it for you. People listen differently. Opportunities come cleaner. Dependence on applause weakens. Panic loosens its grip. Your own face in the mirror becomes less embarrassing to meet. And if no one claps immediately, good. Let the silence test whether you were serious. Let obscurity measure your sincerity. Let delay sharpen your intention. Valuable people are not made by instant reward. They are made by continued obedience to reality after the first excitement dies. Remember this and carry it like a blade wrapped in cloth. The world may notice beauty, talent, charm, innocence, pain, and even promise for a moment, but it bows eventually to sustained value. So stop asking to be seen before you have built anything worthy of sustained attention. Stop auditioning for sympathy. Stop decorating weakness with language. Stop waiting for the room to become fair. Build! Build the mind. Build the skill. Build the body, build the word, build the standard, build the life that can carry weight without begging for witness. Because the saddest thing in this world is not being hated. It is being harmlessly forgettable when you were born with enough breath to become a pillar. Start being valuable. Not tomorrow. Not when your mood returns, not when people apologize, not when the world suddenly becomes kind. Now, in secret, in truth, in repetition, until your name no longer sounds like a request, but like a standard.